However, I have two homes there, and he wants to construct up to my property and for me to give him the easement. He does not intend to put a wall. My concern is that the site plan clearly indicates that he is going to construct a concrete wall, a 6-foot wall, whether that wall be a retaining wall or a precast wall. And he is now saying that he's not going to do that, and he wants to use my wall as his building space to come up to my wall. And that's on two properties there, 460 and 470. I've brought this to the town's attention, and they're telling me that there's nothing that I can do about it, that the site plan can be revised at any point. And I just wanted the board to be aware of this.
Frank, could you comment on this?
Excuse me.
Oh,
I got
I'm
one
sorry.
mic. Yes. So yes, there is some going back and forth between the property owner and Ocean One. As I'm the gentleman that actually spoke to Ms. Warwick, and I did mention that this is a civil dispute because it's one person telling the other person, you have your wall on my property. No, my wall is on my property. Now, in regards to what the developer can do with the site plan, I told Ms. Warwick that, yes, the developer can come in and actually ask for an amendment so that, and I explained what a major amendment is and what a minor amendment is. If the developer was to come to the town and say, I cannot build a portion of the wall in this location, which in this case, this is not a life safety, this is not a retaining wall. This is pretty much a wall for, I'm trying to think of a word, aesthetics. Aesthetics. You know, he could go with landscape, he could go with a wall, he could go with a fence. That's what we're looking at in this case. So yes, the developer could come into the town and request a minor amendment to an approved site plan, which is within their rights. Staff would look into that, review it, and if it meets the criteria, we would approve it.
So have they requested the minor amendment?
They have not. I believe they're still working on the legality of who owns what wall, where that wall is.
So there's no code violation?
Not at this time.
Ms. Warwick, you might want to consult your own attorney if it comes to that.
You have to speak in the mic.
I think the word that
You want to lower the microphone.
I think the word Frank was looking for is a precast wall. And he already has constructed a retaining wall on one side and a precast on the other. The site plan clearly says a concrete wall.
Well, I understand.
And
We're not a judicial tribunal. And if and when the developer goes ahead, as Mr. DeVilla said, it's a civil matter. And it's something that you would then, if you wanted to proceed or take some sort of action, you would probably be well advised to hire an attorney.
There's a question about the encroachment, and there is the surveyor, Mr. Lindbergh, has.
Again, my advice would be appropriate. You might have to obtain the services of an attorney to represent you. There's nothing this board can do.
Okay, I thank you.
Okay.
So Frank, I have a question. So if there is encroachment due to a site plan that this board approved, isn't the onus on us at all? Why, if there's an encroachment, does it become a civil issue? If we approve the site plan that has a defect, let's say?
Well, I think the issue, it might be competing surveys about where the property line is. So that's a civil issue between the two property owners. I think that's, Frank, what you're referring to.
Correct. Again,
Well,
I mean,
it would
we
be-
can get into the details, but I believe that it's the same surveyor that actually did both properties.
And is there a disparity in those surveys? Is that's what,
Correct.
aha.
Yes.
Better.
So again,
So if we approve a site plan based on a, I don't know, a controversial survey or not 100% survey?
It was a sign and seal survey.
So even if it's found to later be in error, that's that? That's that.
Well, he would have to come back if it changes the site plan, it would either have to come back for a site plan amendment, which is either minor or major, depending on the nature of what he has to change.
And are those amendments always granted?
No,
Well, staff reviews it, and depending on which one it is, if it's a major amendment, it has to come to the Planning and Zoning Board and then Town Council. If it's a minor amendment, staff can review it, and then we deem it whether it can move forward or not.
And what determines whether it's major or minor?
I think we have a percentage that actually says 10% of changes that make the project. I think Len's gonna look it up for me.
I was gonna look at.
You can let us know.
It's the impact of the project. So if they have 35% lot coverage, and now you're looking at anything more than 10%, so 45%, that's a major amendment. But if you're decreasing something that does not qualify as a major amendment, we could do it minor amendment, even if it is above the 10%. So I think,
Well, right, there are certain criteria, and the code is worded in a weird way. It says a minor amendment should be approved only if it meets the following requirements. So in order to be minor, its increase in total floor area does not exceed 10%. That's what Frank was saying. There's no change in the boundary of the approved plan. And then there's all these different criteria, what makes it major versus minor. So if it actually changed the boundary, it wouldn't be a minor, but I don't know the details. This is
But
the
it'll
first I've
get-
heard of this.
Examined according to that.
correct, yes.
Peggy Wheeler.
Board. I didn't plan on getting up here, but I have to, Peggy Wheeler, 460 Atlantic Boulevard. I'm talking as a resident. I have to feel, I understand that completely, because as I watched this development go up and I saw those sheer walls with all the dirt taken away, it's a worry. It's a worry for anyone that lives next door to a development. And I think I'm experiencing the same thing with the development that's coming in next door to me, where there's a wall that they say is kind of hugging both sides, and they don't plan on putting another wall in. So what I've done is I've met with planning and zoning and met with also Buck and just said, could you please watch this and make sure that the dirt is not falling away and it doesn't disturb my property, which I think is very important for any developer. But what it might help for the board from their position and from council's position is that we start looking at this in the future and say, okay, let's look a little closer at the walls that are around the developments that we're building and make sure maybe we can resolve a conflict before it starts. And I think that might be helpful for neighbors that are around each development. So it's just a suggestion for the board and for also.
At this point, it's not before the board. so.
Right. No, I know. I understand that. But in the future, I'm just talking in the future, it might be something we can all look at and take into consideration.
Right. Ordinance number 740, native vegetation.
How about the
The minutes.
minutes?
What?
The minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. At this point, is there a motion to?
I'll make a
accept the minutes?
motion to approve the planning and zoning minutes from February 1st, 2021.
I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Looks like everybody's in
Aye.
favor. They're adopted.
Aye.
Len, do you need to read the ordinance?
It's
No?
not required.
All right, thank you. Well, this should be the easiest ordinance that we do in a while. This is probably the third, fourth, or even fifth time that we have seen this. Last time, staff brought to you the code text amendment for Code Section 34, 1084G, the use of native vegetations, and then also including the term native vegetation into chapter 34. We talked about it, we discussed it. I believe we all liked, what the code was going to say, and then we also agreed on the definition. When staff was preparing the memorandum for town council and the ordinance, we realized that we actually didn't bring it to planning and zoning as an ordinance. We brought it up as a discussion. So that's what we're doing here today. Nothing has changed. It's still the same language. As you can see in your backup material, Ordinance 740 that Len provided to us, we are amending section 34.4 to add native vegetation. And then we're also amending 34-1084G for the use of native vegetation. Those are the changes. If anybody has any questions, Len and I are available.
Is there any public comments on this?
Not that I received, no, sir.
Okay. Discussion from the board. I think we've been over that pretty much.
Several times.
So is there a motion to,
I move that we approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 740 as written.
their second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Approved. Discuss and review the comprehensive development plans for recreation and open space element.
Thank you. Thank you, board. So tonight we'll be discussing the recreation and open space element for the comp plan. This one is also a very short element, and this one I was thinking that we could actually do it page by page since it's only 3 pages and just see what comments the board may have for staff. So if you'd like to go that route, we can start at page 1.
Okay, policy 1.1, why do we not have Town Hall Park in there? Hagan Park and Town Hall Park?
Right, so Kagan Park is in there, Town Hall Park is not.
Pelican Lake Park,
Pelican Lake Park would be a good one.
Juno Dunes Park.
Is there a Pelican Lake Park?
Yes, it's on our list of parks.
Really?
Yes, so Pelican Lake, the green area around the lake is considered a park. The lake itself is not, but the
Okay.
green area is, and that's how we actually have it in our zoning map.
So we should have all 3 in there.
Yes, it's just that during that time when this was written, we had no such parks.
Right. And Juno Dunes Park as well, Frank.
Juno Dunes Park.
Juno Dunes would
Jack,
be
if that's
county,
the
right?
counties, would we put it in our comp plan? Juno Dunes, the preserve area?
It's a county park.
Yeah, it's listed
In
on the
1.2.
town's websites as one of the town's parks. That's the reason I'm raising it.
Yeah. We could look into that. It just depends on what we actually list in the comp plan, not the website.
Right.
That might actually make a difference. Mr. Horniman can look into that. But Pelican Lake Park, yes,
So on this,
and Town Hall Park, sorry.
I have a question in the goal paragraph. Second sentence, that encourages town residents to interact with each other. In light of COVID, it made me think, do we really want to encourage people to interact with each other? And the fact that these are open spaces, should that say interact with the environment versus encouraging people to interact with each other? Because it's really just people outdoors interacting with the park, not necessarily with each other. And then it draws the attention more to the environment than to people,
I just looked at
I mean, does that make
the
sense?
states. No,
He's saying no.
I'm not saying no. Oh, no, the section in the, where we looked at DEO's website and it tells us this is what each element should have. For recreation and open space is about 3 lines long. And that's probably why our comp plan, our element is only 3 pages long. But if that's a change that you want to do, and
I mean, if everybody's open to
Right,
that, I
correct.
just thought it's more about interacting with
Mhm.
that environment versus interacting with each other necessarily.
Can I just ask our chair if I might interject here? I know that we have a member of the public who's done some substantial research on this element in terms of other towns, state law, county law, our neighbors' regulations. It might be helpful to our discussion if we would allow her to make a short
Here
presentation
we
to
go.
the council before we go through the points.
It's fine with me.
Yes, Diana Davis.
Hi, Diana Davis, 440 Sunset Way. I'm with the Juno Beach Ecology Group. I have 2 handouts that you're getting. One is a
you.
proposal for recreation open space, and the other one is a cover page that describes the elements that are in our neighboring municipalities, recreation and open space elements that could be added to ours that we believe would improve it. I agree with Frank that the statutory section in Chapter 163 Florida statutes is very small for the recreation and open space elements. What we did was look at the Palm Beach County recreation open space element, and we also looked at the town of Jupiter recreation open space element, and then the village of DeQuesta. And each of the municipalities and the county approached it a little bit differently. They all have elements for the walkable, bikeable community and the interconnection of our recreational facilities. So there's at least 7 important areas that our plan could be improved by adding. And what we would like to ask is a workshop on this element so we can get input from citizens to develop the recreation open space element. So the examples of items that are in our neighboring municipalities, recreation and open space elements, would be a long-range plan for identifying the recreation needs of our citizens, what levels of services are required for each of these needs, and how we plan to achieve those needs. We should have a system for assuring public input to identify the kinds of recreation spaces and the recreation facilities that our citizens desire. We should develop norms for ensuring safe and appropriate use of streets and paths, such as marking for bicycle lanes, pedestrian paths, and trails. A method to systematically review the comprehensive plans of other government bodies, particularly our neighboring towns, to ensure that we're consistent in providing connectivity for common recreational areas, such as bike and pedestrian paths. We should establish objectives to support the use of our recreation and open spaces for cultural, sporting events, and other activities. And we should ensure that our open spaces and recreation areas have beneficial natural vegetation, tree canopies for shade, and create provisions for how we're going to fund our park spaces, such as requiring new developments over a certain size to either provide recreational areas themselves or pay for those services elsewhere. And again, I wanted to ask for a public workshop on this element. Here's the proposal that we've come up with as an example. It is a few more pages, and the policies that it's linked to in our existing plan are at the end of each section where there is a policy. There are some that there aren't policies. And the goal here is, you can see it's 3 paragraphs. Because Frank had told me earlier, if you have a larger goal, then you can have more objectives. So that's kind of what we have here.
Does
And-
Frank have a copy of this?
Yes, but I apologize. I just gave it to him tonight. I was running a bit behind on this.
With the board's acquiescence or permission, I would suggest that Frank have a chance to, his department, to review it and then bring it back at our next meeting
Okay, understood.
for a thorough discussion.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Diana, may I ask just a
So
question?
is the
This-
board agreeable
Sorry.
with that?
Sure.
I agree with it.
Yes. Yes, okay, so
Okay,
please make
thank
sure that
you.
he has a copy. And he will bring it back with comments as to how it might amend or further develop the open space plan that he has given to the board tonight.
Thank
That'll
you.
give everybody here a chance to develop, to go through it and understand it. And
I
part of the
appreciate
board, I
that.
would thank you for presenting that.
Thank you.
Discussion now from the board, if there's any, or
Michael, I'm just wondering if we are going to hear the thoughts of our distinguished advisors here, should we defer a detailed discussion of the document tonight?
I think that would be more appropriate because it's probably going to amend and add to what we have, and we might as well do it all at one time. At that point, if then the board feels that a workshop is needed, we could schedule that also.
Good.
But I think doing it now, we'd be doing it piecemeal.
Agree.
I think this holds true for several of these elements. I mean, they're all tied together. Last time I mentioned the future land use element. So if we're going to workshop these two, then we should really
Well,
workshop that one
We
as
don't
well.
know that we will. We'll have a discussion at the next meeting and then decide.
Mhm.
But I guess we'll handle them one at a time as appropriate.
Well, or does it need a workshop of, does anybody do workshops of a whole comprehensive plan when elements are tied together closely? Or
Only when needed.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's sufficient information for the board to make a recommendation. And sometimes there isn't.
Mhm.
And sometimes there's disagreement amongst the members of the board and then majority rules. So I think the board agreed unanimously last time that the ecology was important enough
Mhm.
that we wanted to do a workshop to get more public input and to have a better understanding of it. Since I guess most of us aren't ecology experts.
Mhm.
So that was the reason for asking for that workshop. So at this point, there's comments from the staff, and I guess you'll have something to say about planning this workshop for
Just
ecology.
Well, could just ask, at some point, I'd like to just ask for some clarification of legal concepts that are in here. But that's
Yes.
just technical.
Just to clarify, we're going to table this for tonight. Staff, from now until our next meeting, we're going to review what was handed to us tonight. And then we're going to have a workshop, or would you like for staff to come
No,
back with
I
comments
don't think
by the
we-
next meeting?
We have not decided to have a workshop yet on this.
You want us to review the document
Wanted
first?
To review it, get staff recommendations.
Mhm.
If you will amend what you've provided, we always appreciate your comments, especially if you think some of them are good ideas. And once we have this information, the board will be able to have a discussion on it, and we'll go from there.
Great. Got it.
And of course, we always look to Jack to let us know, when we've,
Yes, sir.
when it's legally
Mhm.
acceptable.
Correct.
And so we'd be looking for improvements, because I assume this is legally appropriate the way it stands now.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct understanding?
Yes,
Yes. In other words, it meets the state requirement.
correct. Right.
Okay, so at that point, if you wish,
Mr. Horniman would like to mention a.
please.
Good evening. Jack Horniman, JLH Associates, planning consultant for the town. I just want to make a general comment. Obviously, we haven't had an opportunity to review what was just submitted. But just as a caution, if you're going to look at these elements, please don't look at them in a vacuum. Look at them in the context. Now, there's a number of elements in this comp plan. And some of these things may be covered in other elements. Another thing is some of these things, just on a quick look at this, are implementation activities. There's something beyond the plan. They're not policies. For example, you're talking about developing norms for streets and paths and marking them and so forth. Well, this town has been through that process. And a lot of those things like identifying the linkages in town, we introduced the paver standards so that you knew if you were on a sidewalk that had pavers, that was leading you somewhere of public use or public interest. Those standards were incorporated into your subdivision regulations, for example. So they exist, okay? Now, you may not know that. So just when these are developed in the future, please don't look at these elements in a vacuum. I made the same comment last time because it creates confusion sometimes. And it may get us off track. We don't need to be. Some of these things that I see are very, very good, and they could be additions. And as I've told you a number of times, you can put in your plan whatever you want. But remember, this is a policy plan. This is setting general direction for the town. That's why you have zoning codes, building codes, subdivision regulations to implement these policies. So I just want to make sure you make those distinctions when you're looking at this in the future. And it's just cautionary because otherwise we're going to get so sidetracked and have so many different versions of things that it's going to be hard to cohesively try to bring this all together. So let's just keep that in mind as we move forward.
And we would ask for your assistance with this, specifically this one. So I would appreciate your help in preventing us getting sidetracked.
Yeah, this element's pretty wide open. The Florida statutes is pretty general in regards to this. You do have to have a level of service standards. You have to identify your facilities, whether they're your facilities or the county's facilities, or there are regional facilities. The point here is to let you know what exists out there for the public use of your residents. And then, but when you establish level of service standards, they're only for your facilities. Okay? Only the things you have control over. So that's just a few examples.
Thank you.
Are we in comments from staff?
Yes.
Yes.
May I ask some questions?
Oh, yeah, we still have questions?
Just a couple of questions. Clarifications of things, Frank, if you wouldn't mind. When we have a section called community parks, for example, and they talk about areas over 15 acres, do we have any in town? Does Loggerhead Park cover more than 15, for example? I don't know. Just wondering.
Isn't Loggerhead Park also county?
It's county, correct.
That is town?
Yeah, we don't have any community
We
parks in
listed
the
as a
town.
park in Juno Beach, again, on the town's website, and these are things that just aren't clear to me.
Right, yeah, they're in Juno Beach, but they're not Juno Beach's parks. Loggerhead Park is a good example of that. As you mentioned, Juno Dunes as well.
Frank, what about
in Juno
Juno
Beach.
Park on Ellison Wilson?
No, that's outside the town.
That's what I thought, but yet it's called Juno Park.
Right.
We're hopeful.
Or the future annexation, there you go. Right. Oh,
Let me explain one other thing. The comprehensive plan only contains the goals, objectives, and the policies established by the town. That's all the law requires that you adopt. But there is a support document to the comp plan that lists and identifies all inventories of types of uses like you're talking about. So you might want to familiarize with this document as well when you get a chance. I'm pretty sure we identify community parks, regional parks, local parks for definitions of the rule that existed at the time. Now, this original support documentation was put together back in the 80s. Some of it's been updated, a lot of it hasn't. The law has changed as well. So there's certain things that maybe have been deleted. And we had rules we had to follow, they're called Rule 9J5, that implemented Chapter 163, which is the planning law. But 9J5 no longer exists. So things have changed. But if you want to get questions answered, Jim, like you're asking, I would suggest you reference the support document because a lot of that may already be identified in here.
That looks like a lot of homework.
No, actually the format we used, because it is a lot of information, you will see what are called observations. Just to give you an idea. These observations capsulize all the other stuff. So you can do a quick reference. Just reading here.
Could the board be provided with a copy specifically of that?
Yeah, or it's going to be available at town hall.
Yeah, well-
Is it online?
No, we only have that copy. I don't even have a digital copy of it.
Well, we wouldn't need,
We can
wasn't
scan it in
suggesting
and
we
we
want
can-
the whole book, but just what would be appropriate to
Mhm.
what our.
No, but Jim's asking a legitimate question. You know, inventories, it's a lot of volume. But we tried to capsulize and bring it down so you can make quick references
Right.
to find these things out. For example, Loggerhead Park, owned and operated by Palm Beach County, is located within Juno Beach. Juno Beach Park is also owned and operated by the county, is located immediately north of the town limits. The purpose of that is to identify the county parks.
Mhm.
But you as residents have access to those things.
Mhm.
So this is a good document to reference when you get a chance.
Yeah. Frank, I'm wondering, could you create for us, without too much trouble, an idiot's guide to which of these things are parks for the purposes of the comp plan and which are not, but maybe we need to connect to? Would that be, is that particularly complicated? Because I know I'm going to be very confused about which parks we're writing rules for.
Right now, that should not be difficult.
There we go.
Okay.
That's what I was suggesting, that if we could, the board could get a copy of just that which is relevant to this discussion, rather than the whole book.
Yep. And perhaps for county parks, maybe we do have to link to them. So maybe there is some legitimate reference in the comp plan
This table.
We'll give them the whole thing. Yeah.
to parks like that we'd have to make sure we work in tandem with those people. But again, there's probably a couple of layers of connectivity here that,
There's tables.
There you
in
go.
there too.
so if you could just give us copies of that would probably be very helpful.
Of course.
Thanks.
Frank, this ties into, I had spoken about a map. The county has several maps. This goes back to the conservation element. County has several maps, tract maps and other maps that outline conservation areas, but it's not clear. And I was speaking to Frank about perhaps creating one comprehensive map using what the county has, but that it shows the lease terms, or it at least calls out the expiration of the lease, the ownership, because there's overlapping ownerships, there's conservation easements. And I had asked the county for this, but they don't have one all-inclusive map of these lands and the terms. So I thought it would be helpful for us to have a visual of what's coming up now. And then follow up with a presentation of some kind at one of the board meetings or even at a council meeting, because There's a lot of rumors and different thoughts about which leases expire when, who owns what, and which can be developed first, if at all. So since the county isn't sending an representative to do a presentation, perhaps you can put something together for us.
So we do have maps that were given to us by the county for the ownership of the environmental sensitive lands within Juno Beach. I have that map, PDF format. I can share that with everybody.
Is it that tract map, though?
It's actually, the one that I received was actually it was just for Juno Beach, had the legends at the bottom, said state owned,
Yeah.
county owned, and then maybe other areas that were privately owned, but I don't
Right.
believe those
So
were
to
ESLs.
that, I was thinking it would be helpful to know the terms.
And expand,
Yeah.
I think that could be done in a chart form rather than throwing it all on a map. Just have a chart.
However, it would be most easily, deciphered. So that somebody, when you look at it, you say, okay, here's the find parcel, here's the county parcel, here's the state parcel.
Here's the lease, here's the terminal.
Yeah, I mean,
That
they've sent me
lease.
the leases, but if, then you're reading through 15 pages of leases for each of 8 parcels, it would be nice to have one comprehensive.
right, I
thing.
I find it hard to say yes,
Okay.
without looking into it.
Okay,
I would like to speak to the county first to see if maybe they'll be able to help me out with that. Otherwise, I believe the document that you're speaking of is close to 300 pages, the report that they sent.
yeah.
That if I was to say yes, I couldn't promise you that it'll be done by next month,
No.
right? It'll go in the
No,
to-do list.
It's a lot, and that's what makes it difficult. And it would be nice if, even for residents, people, there's a lot of talk now with the campaign. Everybody's talking about the land, the conservation. It would simplify things and put the facts out there if we knew which parcels had which, specifically the leases and the expiration date for leases.
Maybe this is something that I could do. I'll speak with the county.
Yeah,
And instead of waiting till next month to update you, I'll just put in the activity report of what they mentioned to me. If they're able to help me out, that map, I can probably do it in a day.
however you think it would be
Right, but
best. Yeah.
the first thing that I have to do is get in communication with them and figure out how much help I'm going to get on this from them. And then I can update you via the activity report.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion?
Another question for you, Frank, if I may?
Sure.
Sorry, Bob, do you want to go first?
Frank?
Sure.
Yeah, I have a comment. Under the goal for recreation and open spaces, I think it's critical that the statement for the goal says an integrated system of safe recreation and open space. All the issues that we're talking here, whether it's bicycling, fishing, football, soccer, neighborhood parks, we have to make sure the common denominator is that all these spaces that are being utilized are safe. And that should be in the goal statement.
Thank you.
It should be the common thread of our organization in planning and zoning,
Yes, sir.
okay? And it should be emphasized that as we're building, for example, there was a terrible accident just recently in a neighborhood that I formerly lived in at an event where they had a soccer game and someone put their car in reverse 15 feet from the soccer field and backed into a bleacher because they didn't have any barrier. Okay. And I'm just using that as an example, but when we build something, we have to think about examples of what people have learned from better best practices for safety. And we should be conscious of that. So whether it's around the lake or it's sporting events or anything, safety should be number one in anything that we do, whether it's lighting or how we build parking areas, et cetera, and you're the experts on this. We should be making sure that anything that we're doing, safety is number one for our residents.
Understood.
And anybody else have any comments on safety?
No, I fully agree with you, Bob, that safety should be number one, because the last thing you want to do is hurt anybody.
And it's not only, it's a liability issue.
Of course, that's exactly right. Down, you save a lot of money in the end by being safe up front.
Thank you.
Frank, can I ask just for clarification of the status of the dune walkovers and the showers and things like that? Obviously, the beaches are mentioned in this element of the plan, but for the sake of thinking about parks, the beach themselves wouldn't be a park, but are the access areas perhaps parks in the sense that we need to provide rules and regulations, which of course we have. But does that mean they also fall under parks as well as beaches?
If I'm not mistaken, most of those are either on easements or they're on private properties. So
I think it's mentioned in objective 3, policy 3.1, yeah.
Right. That's the reason I'm asking, Paul, is because that's specifically for the beaches themselves. And I'm thinking more of, for example, when you walk down the access roads, you see the list of rules and regulations. You can't have dogs, this and that you can't do. In a sense, do they fall under the category of parks where we need to anticipate what are the appropriate rules? And
like for example, for dune walkovers, we do have a code section in chapter 34 that talks specifically on that, talks about when is it required for somebody to actually build one, or when is it just okay to just have a path, sand path to the beach. So we do have a regulation on that. We do have something that speaks on where you can build it, because then we have to look at the coastal construction control line in there. But that I
wasn't thinking about that aspect of it. I was thinking more of the aspect of, like when you have a park, you put up rules and regulations for the park, for the public. So in a sense, when you're approaching the beach, it's like you're entering a park area where the town has rules and regulations. And therefore, does that fall under the same category, roughly speaking, as our other parks? Not the beaches themselves, not the ocean area, the sand part, but rather the approach areas where all of a sudden you're constrained by rules and regulations.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I understand
I'm probably not being very clear here. I just wondered if beach access is effectively like a park area.
I would say no.
Okay.
To me, that's private property. As I mentioned, some of those are actually on private property, and we require the developer that built the condos next to them to build them out. Then they give them to the town for us to maintain, but they're on private property or they're on easements. So,
okay,
yes,
understood. Right, one last thing quickly. I noticed on the list on the second page of the element here, we have a list of the various recreational activities. There's activities we do nowadays that aren't on the list, and I don't know, do we need to have standards for the bocce ball, the basketball, the kids' play area in Kagan Park? If somebody goes skateboarding, do you need to have standards for those? Just a question.
It's as Mr. Horniman mentioned, this is our comp plan. This is what we decided to do 20 years ago. We could combine some of them, we could delete some of them, we could add more to them.
Do you even need that section in effect?
We do need levels of service,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't tell us, like it has Little League baseball, senior baseball. It doesn't get that specific. We decided to be that specific 20 years ago. But as I mentioned, we could change that. Yeah, that could be modified.
Thank you. That's it for my questions.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Comments from staff?
Yes, sir. The Pelican Lake Workshop will be this Thursday, March 4th at 3 p.m. in this room. The 2021 Juno Beach Municipal Election will be Tuesday, March 9th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. The Town Council meeting will be Wednesday, March 24th at 5:30. At that night, we are asking the Town Council members to select the PNC board members for the upcoming year. And the next planning and zoning meeting will be April 5th at 5:30. Thank you.
Do you have any thoughts for a date or a schedule for our workshop?
Yes.
Ecology?
So the way the staff was looking at this is that we wanted to wait until we received all of our new members or all of our new PNC board members. So we immediately thought anytime after March. But at the same time, we, seat number 4, we have 3 candidates. If there's a runoff election, it would be on the 23rd. We have a town council meeting on the 24th. The election has to be certified. More than likely, that won't happen within the next 24 hours. So April might not be the best day. So right now, staff is thinking that we would do it on May 3rd, which is the next scheduled planning and zoning board meeting. It's just that we would do it earlier in the day. We still have to check, with other, staff members, just to make sure that we're all going to be here, Mr. Len Rubin, Mr. Jack Horniman, and so on. But that's the date that we're looking at the moment.
Well, thank you. That's responsive.
Thank you.
Discussion from the board.
I have a comment. It's an old subject. It's the Florida Power and Light poles throughout the town. Recently, our town manager made a comment that he's working with Florida Power and Light to get the wooden poles that are temporary, since the new concrete poles went up. When are the old poles going down?
The last we heard, which I'm going to look at Caitlin, was probably about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. Actually, one of our council members reached out to AT&T. Our town manager reached out to AT&T, and the answer that we received was, it's on our schedule. It is AT&T that has to remove and actually move their lines to the new poles before FPL can take them down. FPL has done everything that they could do at this moment. There were extra poles right here on Celestial that had no lines. Because Comcast removed their lines, FPL went and removed them the same day. Right now, we're waiting on AT&T before FPL can do that.
So can we have an estimate date of when it's going to be completed?
I can forward your request to the town manager. I believe he's the one dealing with it at this moment. Sir.
And the second issue that was brought to my attention is recently we've been doing digging at the lake. And there's cones, there's been dirt that's been, holes that have been dug, and there's cones that are at the lake on the east side here. And there's dirt that's up a foot high with orange cones on them, and someone's gonna trip and hurt themselves. And when is that dirt gonna be leveled out and grass put there?
I would have to ask Mr. Anthony Mariano on that. I'm sorry, I do not have an ETA for you.
Because it's been like that for over a month now.
I'll pass that along.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Further comments from the board? There being none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned.